Bueno, vosotros no hace falta que os explique, vamos a hacer un chant. So, hello everybody that are joining us from the United States and any other one that joins us from any other place. We are starting with a chant now. We are in the ashram, several of us. We've had some initiations into mantra today. Tomorrow we are having another one. And we are going to start with a chant followed by a meditation with gong. And then we are going to go into this satsang about the shadow of self. And I will try, together with a satsang of Guru Raj, to kind of walk around that concept. So anyhow, let's start. Aim Hrim Krim Chamandaye Bicheche. 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 Aim Shrim Krim Chamandaya 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 Bicheche. Aim Shem Krim Chamandaye Vicheche. 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 Aim Hrim Krim Chamundaye Vicheche. Aim Hrim Krim Chamandaye 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 Vicheche. Aim Shrim Krim Chamandai Bicheche. 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 Krim Chamandai Bicheche. Aim Shrim 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 Krim Chamandai Bicheche.
Svah svah tatsaviturvaranam Bhargo devasya dhimahi Dhiyo yo naha prachodayata Om Vishwani Deva Savita Duritani Parasuva Yadra Bhadram Tannayasuva Om Agne Naya Supatharaya Asman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidvana Yo Yo Dyasya Majuhurana Meno Vaistante Namoktim Videma Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityomaya Mritangamaya Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukhamapnuyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
O God, you are the giver of life, the taker of pain and sorrow, the one who bestows happiness. O Creator of the universe, may we live your supreme light that destroys darkness. May you guide our intellect in the right direction. O Lord, Creator of the universe, remove from us all forms of vice and sorrow, and give us all the qualities that benefit us. O luminous God, lead us to the noble path of grace and devotion. Lord, you know all our actions. Take from us all our faults and sorrows. We offer you, in every possible way, our homage, and we salute you. O Supreme Spirit, lead us from untruth to truth. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. O Lord, may all people be happy in your bosom. May all be freed from their miseries, and may they realize their natural goodness. May no one suffer pain, and may peace be with all.
Oh Dios, tú eres el que da la vida, el que quita el dolor y la tristeza, el que otorga la felicidad. Oh Creador del universo, que podamos vivir tu suprema luz que destruye la oscuridad, que puedas guiar nuestro intelecto en la dirección correcta. Oh Señor, Creador del universo, elimina de nosotros todas las formas del vicio y la tristeza, y danos todas las cualidades que nos benefician. Oh luminoso Dios, llévanos al noble camino de la devoción y de la gracia. Señor, tú conoces todas nuestras acciones, quítanos todos nuestros vicios y pecados. Te ofrecemos en todas las formas posibles nuestro homenaje y te saludamos. Oh Supremo Espíritu, guíanos de la mentira a la verdad, guíanos de la oscuridad a la luz, guíanos de la muerte a la inmortalidad. Oh Señor, que puedan todos ser felices en tu seno, que todos puedan liberarse de sus miserias y puedan darse cuenta de su bondad natural, que nadie sufra dolor y que la paz sea conmigo.
Amidst the gloom of darkened skies, I see the sun rising, enlightening my soul that suffers so much for mankind. The dark grey sky can only show its greyness, but I, peering through it all, see brightening rays. The light fills me, and I, with my arm around its neck, could say, "Shine on and rise higher still, so all can see." My life is naught, neither black nor white nor grey. And sometimes I wonder what this is all about. In colourless light, the answer dawns upon me. I am the rays manifested by the sun. In the heat, we reside within each other.
So you can open your eyes slowly now. And we are going to start with this satsang. And I don't know how good you are going to understand me here. Do you understand me a little bit? Yeah. Anyhow, this one is in English. So, the title is The Shadow of Self. And it makes reference to the moment we say the shadow of self. Well, first of all, we should think about what do we mean by self and what do we mean by shadow. Because from a point of view, self and shadow are just two aspects of the same thing. And from another point of view, the shadow, the manifestation, is the shadow of the self, which is the absolute. In other words, the absolute and the relative. Anyhow, from ages, philosophers have thought about these things and have come to different approaches, thought-wise at least. So I'm going to read you just a little paragraph of the Mahanirvana Tantra, which is a very old tantric teaching, and in fact many of the techniques that we teach somehow come from or stem from tantric techniques. So in the language of these people, self and shadow could also be the Shiva and the Shakti. But this is what it says in the first paragraph. That eternal, immutable existence which transcends the Turiya and all other states in the unconditioned absolute. So it's an eternal, immutable, which means doesn't change, and existence, which means that is somehow manifested, that transcends Turiya, which means all the forms and all consciousness and all other states in the unconditioned absolute. The Supreme Brahman or Para-Brahman without Prakriti or her attributes, which, as being the inner self and knowing subject, can never be the object of cognition and is to be apprehended only through yoga by the realization of the self, Atmanyana, which it is. For as it is said, a spirit can alone know spirit. Being beyond mind, speech, and without name, the Brahman was called Tat, that, and then Tat Sat, that which is. For the sun, moon, and stars, and all visible things, what are they but a glimpse of light caught from that Tat? Well, this is what they said about this indivisible absolute 3,000 years ago. And we still think about these things. For example, David Bohm, which was a physics, he was a theoretical physics. He worked with Albert Einstein in Princeton University. He was a very good friend of Krishnamurti, so he was a little bit aware of this kind of philosophies and teachings. And he wrote a book which is very interesting. He was nominated to a Nobel Prize, by the way, so he was a main scientist in quantum mechanics, And when you study very, very small particles, which is kind of the beginning, because everything when started at the beginning, at the very, 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 very beginning, taking in care the concept of the Big Bang, there were not even hydrogen atoms. It was only photons, particles. But particles, when they are very little, they have a very strange behavior, which means that they look like vibrations, but if you try to perceive them, they become a particle, which means that they are entangled all the time in dual things. So it's a quark up and a quark down, and if the quark up changes, the other changes. And it doesn't matter how far apart they are, that they change at the same time. Somehow they defy the theory that the speed of light is the highest speed that you can reach, because they change simultaneously and doesn't matter the distance. And these are the entangled particles. So this David Bohm came out with an explanation of why this could be such. And he used a mental experiment, which is one of the typical things that Albert Einstein did, which are experiments that you do in your mind. So imagine that reality, that the only thing that exists is a fish in a fishing bowl. You know, imagine a big fish in a fishing bowl. And that's the indivisible one, let's call it that way, no? And imagine that fish, you cannot see it, you cannot perceive it. Because to perceive, you have to create a mechanism by which you are going to just perceive like two things. You are going to perceive picture frames in many times, picture frames of the front of the fishing bowl and of the side of the fishing bowl. So in your perception, you have a fish like this, and a fish that you are seeing it from the tail. So you see a fish that you are seeing like this, and a fish that you are seeing from the tail. But from your perceptual point of view, you have two particles, and that they are entangled, because if this moves like this, the tail moves like that. It's two different things. You perceive it as two different things, but in reality there is only one fish, there is only one thing. So if this is true to the minuscule part of particles, then this becomes true all the way up. So what happens is that in order to perceive reality, you need to create a duality. In other words, you need to create a subject, an I, and an object. And that is just a trick that you do so that you can perceive. So you have the subject and the object, the Shiva and the Shakti, in order to perceive. But in reality, they are no two, they are just one thing. So David Bohm came with this idea that there is an implicit order, which is the fact that there is only one fish, and there is an explicit order, which means that in order to perceive it, it becomes two, and when it becomes two, it immediately becomes all the diverse variety of all the things. Because as soon as you have two things that can combine, you can create a whole universe. With 2 bits, 0 and 1, you can create, everything that fits into a computer. But, you could imagine the ultra big computer with zeros and ones combined. You have all the variety of things that we have in the universe. So this is the theory of Bohm, that there is an explicit universe which is just apparent in the sense that it is based on an implicit universe, which is just one thing, but we see it as diverse, as many different things. So, from time immemorial, 3,000 years ago, and David Bohm is from just last century. Well, he died in, I think it was in 1970 or something like that. So he's very recent, from 20th century. People go on thinking about this, the absolute and the relative and the good and the bad and the light and the shadow and the... And if you think about it, all our lives are based on that dual form of understanding things. To begin with, because all these things, David Bohm and the Tantra Sastra and the Mahanirvana Tantra, all these things are ideas, concepts, but experientially, when you experience the explicit, in David Bohm's words, the explicit universe, you are experiencing it dualistically, because to perceive, you require polarity, you require duality. And from the moment you wake up in the morning, you perceive yourself as one, and the other, which is everything that surrounds you, is the other. There is the subject and there is the object. And then our lives are based on good and bad, everything in our lives. In films, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Westerns, films about policemen. You always have the good ones and the bad ones. Politics, you have the good ones and the bad ones. Wars, you have the good ones and the bad ones. And the most interesting thing is that everybody believes to be the good one and the other part to be the bad one. In other words, Republicans will believe that they are the good ones and the Democrats are the bad ones, and the other way around. Putin will believe that he is the good one and the NATOs are the bad ones and the NATOs the other way around. And so on and so forth. So, what is this story of good and bad, or shadow and self, or every virtue comes with its frailty? So, fear, bravery comes with fear, and happiness with unhappiness, and you name it. And so, what is this? Why we perceive this world as being two, and is it true that it is two? Is it true that there is good and evil? Or it is just a trick of perception? In other words, is it not just a trick that the Brahman, which is the one thing, the one indivisible, eternal thing, in order to perceive itself, it has to divide to begin with into a subject and an object in a first duality, which is the Shiva and the Shakti, and that creates a perceptual trick that makes you perceive this universe as dual, as a dual universe. And this is one thing which is just ideas, and another thing is the practical aspect of living your life in a dual manifestation. Because one thing is thinking about all these things in your mind, and all these things are concepts, and another thing is living a good life in your life. And we live in a manifestation which is governed by the law of polarities, by the law of opposites, because everything, in order to be perceived, has to to perceive, you are perceiving just two aspects of reality, and then you name them good and bad, but in reality there is only one reality. This according to David Bohm and the rishis of the Tantra Sastra. In any case, I am going to use the satsang of Guru Raj that they ask him about precisely discrimination and judgment. Because there is all this, today we have all these movements that they sell non-duality, and non-duality as an idea, as a philosophical idea, it's uninteresting, it can be very beautiful. But as a practical reality, what is the practicality of non-duality? Because that is what we as human beings should be interested in. Because the rest is just mental gymnastics. So I'm going to use this satsang in the pre-satsangs that I made before
he could discriminate between ordinary things in life, for that matter, and not necessarily high philosophical concepts. But now here, Shankara saw the rope as a snake. Why did he see the rope as a snake in the first place? This proves one thing only, that he was looking at the rope with a conditioned mind. His mind, because of association of ideas, would equate or see the rope as a snake. Perhaps the dominant idea in his mind, perhaps the situation would have been such that there would be snakes around those forests and jungles where Shankara roamed around. So automatically his mind associated the rope with a snake. So it was a conditioned reflex of the mind, of the intellect, whereby he saw this and he saw it wrongly. So therefore a patterned mind, a conditioned mind, would be a biased mind.
changing. So if I don't change, you cannot listen to me. So I will repeat a little bit here again. Here we are in the situation of described the situation Shankara mistaking a rope for a snake. So you perceive a snake where there is a rope. In other words, why does perception makes us see a danger where there is no danger? Because if the implicit order is one, then what is there to be afraid of? What is there that can be dangerous to you? There is only one thing. So in reality, there is no danger. But we perceive danger. And there is a rope, but we see a snake. And this is just a metaphor of perceiving danger when necessarily what danger there can be if there is only one thing. No danger. If the implicit order is just one thing, but because in order to perceive it, you have to divide it into two. That's why in quantum mechanics they have all these things. If you try to perceive it, it's a particle. If you don't try to perceive it, it's a probability that there is a particle. So means that in order to the act of perception exist, you need a subject and an object, and in that very moment you need two, and from there on, from the very, very, very mini at subatomic particles to all the way up, everything expresses in polarities when in reality there is only one fish, but it looks like there are many of them. So
now, if the mind is biased in any way whatsoever, then it has no right to judge. So here is the opposition which we will try and bring together just now. Fine. So now, when Shankara saw this snake, there was another part of his mind that started functioning. It was at first an impulse carried through the organs of the eyes to a mechanical part of his brain that received the impulses, but that was not enough, because that could not form a judgment. It still had to go further to that portion which weighs the pros and cons and which we know as the intellect.
So what happens through perception is that you are walking and you say a snake, but in order for you to say a snake, you have to be, there is a process that involves subatomic particles, photons, arrive from wherever and they impact in your retina, which activates another thing and then goes into, in other words, when you are going to perceive something, what is activated is the whole thing that did put in motion this illusion of this universe. In that sense, this universe that we see, the diversity in this universe, is just an illusion, because in reality there is only one thing. But that one thing, in order to be perceived, had to become two, and the moment it became two, it could create diverse forms. And in the creation of those diverse forms, throughout the process of evolution, perception arises, is part, well, perception starts in the very, very beginning, and perception replicates that all the way up through the evolutionary path. And then when you see a snake where there is only a rope, all this process is involved. You go and many things are operating there in your mind. You have your memories, your ideas about this field is a field that has a lot of serpents, your fears, I am afraid of serpents, so I am cautious, and all that integrates into that perception and goes to the analytical part of the brain, and that weighs the pros and cons of the situation and comes about as a conscious thought that tells you that is a snake and it is dangerous. So all that process is happening, but what we are saying from the beginning is that in reality there is no snake, neither rope, because there is no diversity. There is only one thing. So, and this is the essence of non-duality, that it's hard, but this is the essence of non-duality. So, let us continue with the video.
So here we have the eyes, we have the organ of the brain. Gnana Tattva is the Sanskrit name for it. You have the organ of the brain, but still through the brain, which is only but a physical organ, it has to reach, that perception has to reach a still finer level, the level of the intellect, which started weighing. Almost automatically, is this a rope or a snake? Now in this case, it did not really weigh, and it passed it on to the judge that is sitting within you, the small judge. Should have been a little magistrate rather. Yes, small third grade magistrate. The small I. So, what is now really conditioned? The small I is conditioned in accepting that piece of rope as a snake. And so, the small I, being conditioned and being a repository of all the experiences gained in this life or many lifetimes past, associated immediately, the rope immediately with a snake. And here the ego, ahankar, we call it in Sanskrit, passed the message back to the intellect. Thank you very much. We've received your brief, and this is what I, the ego, have judged it to be, that it is a snake. Those impulses are sent to the organ of perception in the brain, the left hemisphere of the brain, and the decision had already been made that this is a snake. So the little ego self is the one that judges, and the little ego is forever chained, bound within its own boundaries, bound within its own impressions, its own sanskaras, and its own experiences.
Which means that due to this nature of reality, which means that although there is an implicit order, as David Bohm would say, which is that there is only one thing, because that one thing, as the old tantric writer said, spirit can alone know spirit, or the unconditioned absolute without prakriti, which is form or her attributes. The inner self and the knowing subject can never be the object of cognition. So the knower can never be the object of cognition, because to be known, you need to create an object of condition, thereby it created this first separation, and from there all the rest of separation came. So philosophers from 3,000 years ago thought about this, scientists of last century think about this, philosophers today think about this, but what is the meaning of this from a practical point of view? From a practical point of view is that you are a product of evolution, you wake up in the morning, and your mind, which has all the repository of perceptions and experiences associated to those perceptions from the beginning of the cycle of the universe to today, is based on something which is illusory to begin with. So you are perceiving with your conditioned mind and judging things as good or bad, when at the end of the day, Republicans are an aspect of Democrats and Democrats an aspect of Republicans. Here in Spain would be El PP and El PSOE are two aspects of the same thing. And Russia and Putin and NATO are two aspects of the same thing. And day and night and woman and man are two aspects, two perceptions of the same thing. In fact, any virtue that you have has two aspects. The virtuous aspect and the frailty aspect. I don't know what an example I could put. Love becomes hate, comes with hate, and hate becomes love. So there are two aspects of the same thing. In the case of love and hate, is an emotion. Fear and bravery, they are two aspects of the same thing. Bravery requires fear to be expressed. If not, there could not be bravery without fear. In other words, they are just two pictures of something which is just one thing. But you have to make two pictures, two different pictures, so that it can be perceived. And this is the mystery of the Trinity. You need two so that they become one being three. Something like that. Anyhow, we continue with the satsang, which is basically saying, well, okay, so the ego is making all these judgments. From the point of view of your practical life, is that you as an ego, that are the result of all these perceptions and impressions, are judging things as good or bad. Only you, the ego. And we continue with...
But then how come Shankara a moment later discovered that no, I've made a mistake, this is rope? So there again the same process went through. So here from perception it led to a conception. And then the concept reversed the whole procedure and it started all over again in saying, in rejudging the situation that this is a rope. Now, who judged it to be a rope? Also the small I judged it to be a rope. It might have just well have been a shadow. It might have not been a snake, neither a rope, just a shadow. So therefore, the small I in man is subjected, God bless you, is subjected to all kinds of illusions. And the greatest illusion that the small I could ever create for itself is the illusion of self-identity.
So, because this manifested world that looks like a diversity of things is just an illusion, because in reality there is only one thing. And when I say there is only one thing, now I am not even speaking about what the tantric teachings might say, but what a modern scientist like David Bohm or others can also say. Because as human beings need to understand and recognize, when you start trying to find the truth of all this, you come to similar conclusions. If you are using science or Eastern philosophy or Western philosophy or whatever you use. So the human mind lives all sorts of illusions, because this is just an illusion. And the biggest of illusions that human beings have is the illusion of being an individual, an identity, as something different, existing apart from the only one thing that exists. That is the biggest of all illusions, that you have an independent existence, which you don't have. You depend on oxygen, you depend on everything. Everything has to exist for you to exist. It would be impossible for you to exist without everything else existing. If you think about what made you come into existence by pulling of the rope and with your parents, and you look at all the events that had to happen for you to be here, you will realize that you have no existence without all those events having happened. So you don't have a separate existence of what is happening. So that is one of the biggest illusions of human beings, thinking that we are some sort of independent individuals that have a future or a place to arrive or a place to reach to, or that you can have success or you can fail, because that is not real. That is just an illusion.
Now, a person must have that individuality. A person must recognize his individuality. Good, fine. And we know that that individuality exists within a certain limit, or else that individuality is limited. What we are trying to achieve through our meditational and spiritual practices is this, that little I is but none apart from the big I. There is the real judge, not the third grade magistrate. Good. So when we start on our spiritual practices, what we do is we expand the little I. And the expansion of the little I in us means we develop a greater awareness. And as man's awareness develops, so does his little I expand. On the teacher's course last week, I told them that we do not want to annihilate the little I, because everything in existence is indestructible. Everything changes form and shape, but the essence of it is always indestructible. The analogy we commonly use is water vapor, water, ice. Three different things. One is barely tangible, one is liquid, one is a solid block. But yet the underlying principle H2O remains the same all the time. So, therefore, It is only a change of the same substance, the same matter, the same energy, which condenses itself from a subtler level to a grosser level. And that is what all this whole universe is about.
Couldn't listen me. Sorry for that. I made the explanation. Maybe that you didn't need it, that the same concept here is explained with water vapor, liquid water, and the solid water of an ice. Is different aspects of the same thing, H2O. So there is only one thing, the implicit universe or the implicit order, but when it becomes explicit, manifested, it looks like there are many things in different grades of condensation.
But from the subtlest energy, from total subatomic and even subatomic matter, this entire universe expanded into the grossness that we see around us, into things that are really tangible. So from the intangible, through the process of evolution, all tangibility has come. Now, we are stuck with this tangibility. And the thing, as far as a human being is concerned, that keeps up the concept of name and form is none else but the ego. Now, we cannot annihilate the ego. It is indestructible, but we can expand it, like a piece of...
What we are saying here is that we are stuck with this tangibility from the subatomic particles all the way up to this manifested universe, to this very tangible universe. Is just this expression of this one thing. And we are stuck with this tangibility. We are stuck with this tangibility through attachment to name and form, through the idea that we are an independent entity of some description that can get enlightened or not, that can die or not, that can suffer or not, that has good things ahead or bad things ahead. So we get stuck into that, and that is our problem as human beings, and that is what we have to transcend, the attachment to name and form.
Rubber that we can stretch and stretch and stretch until it becomes transparent. If it is unstretched, it is opaque. The light cannot shine through it, but sufficiently stretched, it assumes that clarity whereby the full light of that, of the judge within, the kingdom of heaven within, that the fullness of that light shines through the ego self, through the individual self that is really the ego. The window is clean, spotless, and the light shines through in full force. And the light is so powerful that the glass is not even noticed, and yet it exists.
Which means that by expanding the ego, so we have an ego which is none other thing than the tangibility, the sum totality of all those perceptions that created a tangibility. But if it is contracted, you cannot see through it. So you expand the ego. What does it mean, expanding the ego? It means expanding your awareness, starting to perceive things not self-centered, not based on your name and form, not based on thinking that you are something that needs to be protected, but just experiencing, allowing experience of existence to happen by itself, connecting with your heart, and then you expand the ego, which means that implicit order, which is within, which is the only thing that exists, shines through your individual self, because your individual self has stopped of being so important in reality. You forget about yourself, forgotten of your care amongst the lilies, as the poem of St. John of the Cross goes. Which means that you simply realize that you are not, in reality, is just that, that you are not so important. You do your meditation techniques and your spiritual practices, and you take away the importance of all the things you think that you can gain or lose in life, and little by little you will be perceiving things from a much broader awareness, to a point that the light, what you are in reality, will shine through the individuality, in which is another illusion, because it's just a superimposition of perceptions, of impressions, of perceptions, of things that looked to be two when there was only one thing to begin with, since the universe began, since the sub atomic particle.
So this means that individuality can coexist with universality. So man, living as an individual being, can still find within himself the real I, the real kingdom of heaven, and thereby, though having individual limitations, can live in that silence, that peace, that joy of the universe. So Shankara could have seen the rope and the snake simultaneously. For what differentiation is there between the snake and the rope? Shankara looked at the surface value. Now, Shankara was supposed to be one of India's greatest philosophers. He saw the surface value. Of course, this analogy was used in the description of illusion, in the description of Maya. I'm using it in a totally different way. Good. Shankara saw the surface value, firstly, the object as a snake, and then thereafter, with a certain kind of realization, he saw it as a rope. And because he saw the surface value of things with his little ego self, he started forming judgments. And his discriminatory powers told him what it was all about. But the question is this: if he had to dive deeper within the snake or the rope and saw the essence, there he would find the unified state of life. For even the rope has life. Every atom is a universe unto itself, with millions of electrons or what have you swirling around the nucleus. Everything is alive. There's nothing that is dead.
Y os hablo en inglés pudiendo hablar en español, porque no estaba puesto el... I'm sorry for those that you were not listening to me, but I forget to change the thing, and then you don't listen to me. Anyhow, I don't even know what I was speaking about. Yeah, that in other words, that here Guru Raj is speaking about that you could see the rope and the snake at the same time, which is realizing that it is the same thing, because in reality there is a universe in every atom. If you go to analyze an atom, you have to go to very small distances. Si miras hacia un átomo solo, tienes que poner muchos 0,00001 metro, 0,00000. Tienes que poner muchos ceros detrás de una coma. You have to put a lot of zeros after a comma, as a dot, to the little, no? The amount of zeros you have to put in an atom when you go to the little, and the amount of zeros you have to put to the universe when you try and see the whole universe is similar. So you have so many zeros going to little as zeros you have going to big. ¿Entendéis lo que quiero decir? O sea, pues puedes poner tantos ceros hacia lo pequeño, es decir, que es igual de grande, tiene los mismos ceros. Eso simplemente dos aspectos, lo super pequeño y lo super grande. So that is part of the approach of Bohm as a scientist. Speaks about that this implicit order, which is there is only one thing, is based on that an holographic kind of approach to the description of the universe, which means that there is a universe in the very smallest part, replicated itself one and another time again.
Anything which you think is mundane is alive Things which you think is inanimate really is animate, for death can never exist, only life has existence. Good. Things that seem inanimate might be existing in a much grosser form. Like a stone, you say the stone is dead, yet when the stone is analyzed, you will find, there are whole universes within the stone forever rotating and revolving all the time. And that very motion is created by that life force, by that judge, by that universal power, by that divine energy. And that divine energy is in the stone. How can we call the stone? Say that the stone is dead. It is alive if we can see the life in it. Shankara saw the surface value of the snake and the rope, but if he had seen deeper, he'd have seen life in the rope and life in the snake, and seeing life in either of his perceptions, he would have found it is the same life that exists in the rope and in the snake in a different form.
So in reality, this is where we are going to leave the satsang now, because we've already gone for an hour and 40 minutes together with the meditation, which is this idea, which is light and shadow, or rope and snake, is just two aspects of the same thing, of the same life force. And this satsang is very, very interesting, so maybe if I have time tomorrow, I will continue tomorrow. Y nada, los que me habéis aguantado aquí en inglés estoicamente, pues muchas gracias. ¿Me habéis entendido un poquito?
Sí, sí. Sí, yo sí.
Poco, algunas poco, ¿no?
Y algunas cosas.
Algunas cosas, sí, ¿no?
Más que otras veces, la verdad.
Bueno, pues nada, namaste to everybody outside in the virtual world y namaste.
Namaste.